David Mamet's Glengarry Glen Ross, first staged in 1983 and winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Drama, is one of the most scathing and stylistically distinctive works of American theater in the late 20th century. Set in the ruthless world of real estate sales, the play is a brutal and darkly comic examination of American capitalism, masculinity, competition, desperation, and the corrosive effects of a system built on survival of the fittest ethics. Through sharp, rapid-fire dialogue and emotionally charged confrontations, Mamet constructs a high-stakes environment where human value is measured only by sales figures, and where moral compromise is not only tolerated but required. The play is as much a psychological portrait of failed ambition as it is a social commentary on a world that rewards duplicity and punishes empathy. Structure and setting. Glengarry Glen Ross is structured in 2 acts, both featuring a small cast of male characters who work in a real estate office. Act 1 is composed of a series of vignettes in a Chinese restaurant, while Act 2 takes place the next day in the office itself, which has been burglarized overnight. The plot unfolds in real time, with characters entering and exiting with urgency and tension. The atmosphere is tense and claustrophobic, reflecting the emotional pressure cooker in which these men operate. The set is stark, underscoring the desperation and impersonality of their environment. Act 1. Desperation and manipulation. The first act introduces us to the play's central characters and the competitive system in which they operate. A manager named John Williamson announces a sales contest. The top seller wins a Cadillac, the second-place finisher gets a set of steak knives, and everyone else is fired. This brutal ultimatum sets the tone for the play's exploration of cutthroat capitalism. Shelley, the machine, Levine. Levine is an aging, once successful salesman who has fallen on hard times. Desperate to keep his job and reclaim his former glory, he begs Williamson for better leads. The leads are names and contact information for potential buyers, which are tightly controlled by management. Levine offers to bribe Williamson for good leads, a move that hints at the moral compromise that will characterize much of the play. Dave Moss and George Aronow. Moss and Aronow, 2 other struggling salesmen, sit in a booth discussing their own frustrations. Moss is aggressive and cynical, and he proposes a scheme to break into the office and steal the premium leads, which he plans to sell to a rival real estate agency. Aronow is meek and hesitant, but by the end of the conversation, Moss has implicated him as an accomplice just by discussing the plan. Richard Roma. Roma is the office's top closer and a master manipulator. He delivers a seductive monologue to a potential client, James Link, extolling a philosophy of personal freedom and success. Roma is charismatic, smooth, and calculating. He symbolizes the seductive but ultimately hollow promise of capitalist ambition. Act 2. The fallout. The second act begins the morning after a burglary has occurred at the office. The premium Glengarry leads have been stolen, and the police are involved. Each salesman is interviewed off stage, and tension mounts as suspicion swirls. Levine's moment of glory and collapse. Levine enters triumphant, boasting that he finally closed a big deal with a couple named Nyborg. He believes this sale will save his job and restore his status. However, when he later realizes that the Nyborgs are chronic time wasters with no intention or ability to buy, the victory turns hollow. In an emotionally charged moment, Levine inadvertently reveals knowledge about the burglary that he shouldn't have unless he was involved. Williamson pieces it together, and Levine's complicity in the theft is exposed. Levine pleads and begs for mercy, but Williamson remains cold. Levine's desperation and moral failure culminate in this moment of total defeat. Roma and Link. Roma tries to salvage his sale with Link, who arrives with his wife's insistence to cancel the contract. Roma attempts to manipulate Link into believing it's too late, that the paperwork has already gone through. When Williamson clumsily tells the truth, the deal is lost. Roma furiously attacks Williamson, blaming him for the failure. Moss and Aronow. By the end of the play, it is implied that Moss was the mastermind behind the robbery, but he disappears from the narrative. Aronow, clearly terrified and complicit by association, is left broken and powerless. Character analysis. Shelley Levine, the machine. Levine is the most tragic figure in the play. Once a successful salesman, he is now past his prime, desperate to regain relevance and respect. He views success as tied to masculinity and identity. His name, the machine, reflects past glory, but he is now reduced to groveling and scheming. Levine's downfall illustrates the brutality of a system that has no place for failure or age. His moral degeneration, first offering bribes, then participating in a burglary, is driven by a society that ties human worth to economic output. His final humiliation is complete when Williamson ignores his pleas, reflecting the merciless logic of the capitalist machine. Ricky Roma. Roma is the embodiment of the capitalist predator, charming, confident, and persuasive. He manipulates language with skill, using abstract philosophy and personal charisma to seduce clients. His speech to Link, about life, death, and seizing the moment, is emblematic of the conflation of salesmanship with existential purpose. Yet Roma is not a villain in the traditional sense. He, too, is a victim of the system, pressured to sell, to close, to win. His anger toward Williamson is not just about losing a commission, but about the collapse of illusion. That slick words and charm can beat the system. Dave Moss. Moss is a bitter, aggressive salesman who represents resentment and rebellion. He rails against management, blaming them for his failures. His plan to steal the leads is framed as a moral justification against a corrupt system. However, Moss is also manipulative and self-serving, dragging Aronow into his scheme without regard for consequences. Moss reflects the contemptuous undercurrent of the American working man, who sees himself as being exploited by unseen forces, yet lacks the power or vision to create real change. George Aronow. Aronow is meek, hesitant, and morally torn. He is the least assertive character, easily bullied by Moss and marginalized by the others. He symbolizes the moral paralysis of the average person in a corrupt system, aware of wrongdoing but too fearful to act. His presence adds a layer of realism to the play, showing that most people comply with unethical systems not out of malice, but fear and insecurity. John Williamson. Williamson is the office manager and the play's most hated character. He controls the leads and enforces the rules, but lacks the charisma or empathy of the salesman. He represents bureaucratic power without personality, a middleman enforcing corporate policies without understanding the emotional stakes. Williamson's coldness toward Levine in the final act marks the play's most chilling moment. His indifference reveals that in capitalism, there are no relationships, only transactions. Themes and analysis. 1. Capitalism and survival. At the heart of Glengarry Glen Ross is a ruthless critique of free market capitalism, where survival depends on performance, and worth is measured by sales. The characters are trapped in a zero-sum game. There are only two prizes, and everyone else loses. The sales contest is not just a gimmick, it is a microcosm of competitive capitalism. There is no collaboration, no empathy, only winners and losers. The leads, the contracts, the clients, they are commodities. But so, too, are the men themselves. Mamet does not romanticize the working man. Instead, he shows how a system that rewards deception and punishes failure breeds moral decay, paranoia, and cruelty. 2. Language as power. Mamet's characters wield language like a weapon. Speech is currency, seduction, and manipulation. The dialogue is fast-paced, fragmented, and often overlapping, creating a sense of urgency and confrontation. Roma's monologues, Moss's rants, Levine's pleas, all reveal how language constructs reality in the world of sales. Truth is irrelevant. What matters is the ability to persuade, to close, to dominate. Yet language also fails. When Williamson exposes Roma's lie to Link, the illusion collapses. Words, so powerful in the mouths of salesmen, are ultimately impotent against the system's cold machinery. 3. Masculinity and identity. All the characters are male, and their identities are deeply tied to performance, competition, and dominance. Success is not just financial, it is proof of masculinity. To fail is to become emasculated. Levine's desperation is rooted in a need to reclaim his manhood. Roma's swagger is performative masculinity. Moss's anger is a defense against impotence. Arano's passivity is equated with weakness. Mamet critiques this hyper-masculine culture, showing how capitalist values warp personal relationships and emotional expression, leaving only aggression and isolation. 4. The illusion of the American dream. The play dismantles the myth of meritocracy. The men are told that if they work hard and sell well, they will succeed. But the system is rigged. Leads are distributed unfairly, and the best clients are withheld. Levine's tragedy is that he believed in the dream. His downfall is not just professional, it is existential. He learns that effort means nothing in a system designed to exploit and discard. Mamet portrays the American dream not as a ladder, but a trap, where success for one means destruction for another. 5. Alienation and despair. Beneath the bravado and bluster lies a deep sense of loneliness. None of the characters have meaningful relationships. Clients are faceless, families are absent, and colleagues are enemies. The burglary, the betrayals, the breakdowns. These are not just plot points. They are symptoms of a spiritually empty world. Mamet shows how a life devoted to closing deals leads not to fulfillment, but to despair. The office, the restaurant, the contracts, these settings are devoid of warmth. They are arenas of combat, not places of connection. Conclusion. David Mamet's Glengarry Glen Ross is a searing portrait of capitalist America, where men are reduced to their ability to sell, and where morality is not only negotiable, it is an obstacle. With razor-sharp dialogue and minimal staging, Mamet exposes the emotional and ethical wreckage of a system that values profit above all else. The play is not just about real estate salesmen. It is about anyone living in a world where worth is measured by output, and where failure is not just penalized but dehumanized. In Glengarry Glen Ross, there are no heroes, only survivors and casualties. Mamet leaves us with a chilling vision of success that is empty, cutthroat, and ultimately tragic.